Anthea of the Manor. 1. In the weeks and months since Anthea's sleepover in my flat, I had often thought back to that wonderful night of passion. I had relived every sweet moment in my mind again and again. I vividly remember watching Anthea on TV when I was a young schoolgirl. Anthea Turner was a presenter on Blue Peter, the UK's known children's program, and I think I fell in love with her back then. I drove my mother mad getting together all the cardboard boxes, yogurt cartons, toilet rolls and pipe cleaners needed to make Tracy Island, the set for the Thunderbirds puppet show. I remember I completely unraveled 4 new toilet rolls just to get the cardboard tubes inside. My mother went bizarre. I watched Anthea make the island on TV and eventually I made the model myself. It became a permanent feature of my bedroom. One of my proudest achievements. I sent a photo to Anthea of me proudly holding the island, but I didn't get a reply. I never even dreamt that one day I would meet Anthea, let alone become her lover. At one time Anthea was the no. 2 highest paid woman on TV. Cilla Black was no one. She was voted Television Personality of the Year. She even had a scented sweet pea named after her. From these heady and fragrant heights of fame and public adoration, she became reviled and criticized in the press for her affair with Grant Bovey. This notorious affair led to the breakup of Grant's marriage, to the dismay of his wife Della and their 3 beautiful daughters. I knew that Anthea and Grant had suffered untold anguish because of this relationship. And yet their only crime was that they had fallen in love with each other. The press had a field day. Banner headlines, page after page of gossip and innuendo. It went on for weeks and weeks. There was, however, a happy outcome. Della agreed to a divorce, and the month August 2000 saw the marriage of Anthea and Grant in an elaborate wedding ceremony held in the grounds of their £3.5 million home in Surrey. The marquees covered 25,000 square feet of lawn. There were celebrity guests including Gloria Hufford and her daughter Karen. It was a lavish, showbiz event like nothing the local village of Dunsfold had ever seen before. The wedding was photographed exclusively by OK, the glossy celeb magazine. It seemed for Anthea and Grant that all the anguish and pain was behind them. Star-crossed lovers. They had set sail into a future of happiness and contentment together. Fate, however, is fickle, and when the next issue of OK magazine hit the newsstands, there were prominent adverts for a well-known chocolate bar. The wedding photos of Grant and Anthea showed them eating this same chocolate bar at their wedding reception and grinning at the cameras. The whole wedding was perceived as a gigantic promotion for a chocolate bar. Poor Grant and Anthea were ridiculed in every tabloid newspaper throughout the land. I couldn't believe it. My darling Anthea had gone through enough heartbreak over the past year. Now the press and TV media had her in their sights once again. I followed these developments with dismay. I got the odd phone call from Anthea, maybe once a week, telling me her side of the story. She needed some sympathy, a friendly, comforting voice on the end of a telephone. I was so happy to provide it. As the weeks went by, I felt that slowly but surely she was coming round from this trauma. She was in love with Grant. The fates had decreed that they should be together. And they were so in love. 2. It was the middle of October. Anthea knew that I had a week's holiday. I had intended to spend it decorating the bedroom in my flat. That was until Anthea phoned on Saturday night. She invited me to come and stay for a few days at her home in Surrey. Grant was away in Portugal looking at property for a big business deal. "I'll be so lonely if you don't come," said Anthea down the phone in that pleading little girl voice I couldn't resist. I needed very little persuading, and on Monday morning I drove out of London heading southwest into the leafy lanes of Surrey. I drove through Guildford, then on through Godalming. Soon I found myself driving through open countryside with ancient woodlands and tiny hamlets. At last I found the village of Dunsfold, and then I knew that Anthea's mansion was not far away. Soon I arrived at the scrollwork gates that are the entrance to Babin's Grange. Anthea and Grant's £3.5 million pad. I drove through the gates and up the long drive to the house. Anthea was on the doorstep to greet me with her golden retriever dogs Gina and Becky at her feet. I climbed out of the car and we embraced. There was an affectionate kiss. Then Anthea held me at arm's length. "Jess, you've come," she said, beaming with joy. "You don't know how happy I am." I was overwhelmed. Anthea was looking more glamorous than ever. It looked as though the chocolate bar fiasco was all behind her and she was back on top form. She carried my suitcase up to the guest bedroom, which had bay windows and a wonderful view of the estate. We stood by the window and Anthea put her arm around my shoulder. "I am so glad you could come," she said. "We're going to have a wonderful time." I looked at Anthea. That blonde, wispy hair framing her lovely face. Those big blue eyes. We embraced and kissed. A warm feminine kiss, like the ones we'd shared on that sleepover of such fond memory. I knew then that Anthea wanted to continue our secret, intimate relationship. She led me on a tour of Babin's Grange and showed me all the improvements and rebuilding they had done to the property in the past year. It was a dream. A palace fit for a princess. And Anthea was my princess. A £3.5 million mansion set in 40 acres of Surrey parkland. The estate even has its own polo field. We sat in the spacious lounge drinking coffee. "Well, my darling," I said, "you read The Lady of the Manor. All you need now's a title. How about Lady Anthea of Dunsfold?" Said Anthea. "Sounds nice." The morning sun shone in through the floor-to-ceiling windows in the lounge. There was a warmth about the house, a feeling of peace and calm. It was decorated in a simple country style. Nothing too ostentatious. Already I felt quite at home. On a chair at the side I noticed Anthea's riding clothes and her riding boots newly cleaned and polished. She saw me looking at them. "I thought we could go for a ride this morning," she said. "And I can show you round the estate." "Fine," I said. At Anthea's request I depacked my riding gear into the boot of my car. Anthea walked over to the chair. "In fact, I am going to change right now," she said. She unhooked her black knee-length skirt and let it fall to the floor. She took off her pink blouse and stood by the chair in just her bra and panties. They were blue with a flower pattern. For a woman who had just turned 40, her body was amazingly trim and sexy. She had the body of a 20-year-old. She walked across the carpet and sat on my knee. She put her arms around my neck. "Isn't he this sexy?" she said. We kissed and I felt her lovely breasts. I thought back to the first time I saw Anthea on TV. I was an 11-year-old girl watching Blue Peter, the children's program. Anthea was a presenter on the show and became like an older sister to the millions of children who tuned in. She was lovely and gorgeous back then. But here and now, in October 2000, she was still as lovely and beautiful as ever. We smooched on the sofa, our kisses so affectionate and warm. Until Anthea said, "Come on, Jess. The horses are bridled and ready. Let's go for a ride." 3. Anthea looked the part as we walked over to the stables. Dressed in a green riding jacket, green polo neck sweater, jodhpurs and riding boots, she led her mount, Bonnie, out from the stables. A 2-year-old grey mare. A wonderful horse and a present from Grant. I mounted Sheba, a 2-year-old chestnut mare with a calm, placid nature. We set off at a brisk trot, out into the field behind the house. Anthea leading the way, her golden retrievers, Gina and Becky running eagerly alongside us. It was a fine October morning with blue skies and white cumulus clouds in the far distance. It felt so good to be back in the saddle. Trotting along, Anthea taking the lead. She turned and shouted something to me, pointing into the distance at the same time. I had no idea what she was saying. I was too busy controlling Sheba and getting to know this unfamiliar horse. We reached a stream with an ornamental bridge. We dismounted and walked the horses across. Everywhere around us were trees in their autumn colors: oak, ash, beech and silver birch. Yellow leaves floated on the stream. The air was fresh and cool. Sunlight filtered through the tall branches of the trees and reflected on the surface of the stream. We left the horses to wander free and walked back onto the wooden bridge together. It was a lovely autumn scene. The green of the summer were turning into the yellow and gold of autumn. Anthea put her arm around my shoulder and smiled at me. "It's so beautiful," she said. "Yes," I said. "It's cool autumn days like these that I love so much. The smell of decaying leaves. The colors of autumn. Log fires in the grate and the nights drawing in." She kissed me on the lips. I closed my eyes. All I could hear was a soft wind blowing high in the beech trees and the gentle trickle of the stream below. I put my arms around Anthea's waist. Our kisses were so passionate. I was almost afraid. I let myself go and enjoyed that wonderful moment on the bridge. Surrounded by trees in their autumn colors and the soft gurgle of the stream. It was only the neighing of Bonnie that brought us out of our passionate reverie. We remounted and followed a path that led alongside the stream. Eventually we came to a wide pond surrounded on all sides by beech and willow trees. The previous owner had kept the pond stocked with trout. We hiked along the edge of the pond and came to a wooden lodge. We dismounted and left the horses to wander freely while we explored the lodge. It had overhanging eaves and a wide veranda built over the edge of the pond. It reminded me of a Swiss chalet. "Grant and I come here on fine summer evenings," said Anthea. "We sit here and watch the swallows swooping low over the surface of the water. It's magical." "And then you make love," I suggested cheekily. "No, silly," she said, gently hitting my shoulder with her hand. "We just sit here, arm in arm, chatting and listening to the sounds of nature. It's quite innocent," she said, grinning at me. In former days the estate was kept well stocked with pheasants, so there would be regular game shoots at the end of the year. The lodge was used as a shelter for Victorian gentlemen in Norfolk jackets. A place to get out of the rain and enjoy a pipe of tobacco or maybe a flask of whiskey. At that time Grant and Anthea were not sure whether to carry on the hunting traditions of the estate or utilize the land for completely different purposes. We sat on the veranda and watched Gina the golden retriever walk to the edge of the pond and begin lapping the water. I looked out across the still surface of the pond. At the beech trees over to the left, whose branches cascaded down and almost touched the surface of the water. It was an idyllic scene. "I can't believe I am here," I said, as Anthea put her arm around my shoulder and drew me to her. "I thought I'd be spending the week decorating the bedroom in my Camden flat. Instead, here I am in this paradise." "Here with me in paradise," said Anthea as she gently stroked my brown hair and kissed my cheek. Anthea knew how besotted I was about her. Even from being an 11-year-old girl watching her on Blue Peter, the children's TV program. She was now age 40 and I was age 26. But somehow that didn't seem to matter. Maybe after all the traumas of the past 2 years, she needed my love and affection more than I knew at the time. Anthea has a loving nature and has always treasured the affection of women and girls. The hounding by TV and newspapers was made even more distressing as the cruelest jibes and criticisms so often came from women journalists and TV producers. Women can be so bitchy and cruel. Maybe my female presence was helping to restore Anthea's faith in womankind. The sun shone down from a blue October sky as we sat there on the veranda, arm in arm, gazing out across the pond. Anthea unbuttoned her riding jacket and I put my hand inside and round her waist. It was warm in